Margot Hale had built the kind of life people admired from across a room. The problem was, some women knew exactly how to cross the room. By 7 o'clock, the rain had turned Boston glossy. It slicked the brick sidewalks outside the Heritage House and gathered in the seams of the old stone steps, catching the glow from the lanterns near the entrance. Cars pulled up one after another, black doors opening beneath dark umbrellas, heels clicking against wet pavement, tuxedo cuffs disappearing under wool coats. Inside, the air was warmer, candlelit, polished, full of champagne, winter perfume, and voices trained to sound effortless even when everyone was listening. Margot Hale stood just inside the ballroom doors with a headset tucked behind one ear and a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. The champagne was useful. It made her look like a guest, not a woman quietly controlling 300 moving parts. She wore a deep navy gown with clean lines and a low, elegant back, the kind of dress that did not beg for attention but rewarded anyone who looked twice. Her dark hair was pinned at the nape of her neck. Her earrings were small diamonds, old enough to look inherited, though she had bought them herself after one especially impossible spring season. That was one of Margot's private pleasures, buying herself things people assumed someone else had given her. Tonight's gala was not the largest event she had ever produced, but it was one of the more delicate ones. Boston historical preservation people were not difficult because they were rich. Rich people were rarely difficult in original ways. They were difficult because each of them believed they understood taste better than everyone else in the building. Margot's job was to make all of them feel correct. The ballroom did look beautiful, though. Not overdone. Margot disliked rooms that screamed money. This one murmured it. Cream linens, antique brass candlesticks, dark greenery, white flowers, low lamps along the side walls, and just enough candlelight to soften every face without making the room look like it was trying to hide something. A string trio played near the windows. Waiters moved like shadows with silver trays. The old wood paneling glowed in the light, and the rain beyond the glass made the city feel closer and farther away at the same time. Margot checked the room once. Not like a guest. Like a conductor. The West Bar had a slight bottleneck. The sponsor table near the archway was too empty. One of the junior servers was standing too close to the kitchen doors, nervous enough to spill something if anyone startled him. "Nora," Margot said softly. Her assistant appeared beside her with the speed of a person who had learned that Margot rarely called twice. "Yes. Move one tray of crab cakes to the West Bar before the trustees start forming a traffic jam. Send Amelia to the sponsor table with the silver donor packets, and tell Mark to breathe before he ruins that tray." Nora glanced toward the young server. Poor Mark. Mark chose catering. He's 19. Then he has time to recover. Nora smiled and disappeared. Margot let her eyes travel across the room again. Everything was fine. Fine did not mean relax. Fine meant no one else could see the problems yet. That was enough. She had built a career on enough. At 40, Margot knew exactly what she was good at. She could read a room in under 10 seconds. She could tell which donor needed flattery, which sponsor needed distance, which board member had been drinking too quickly, which wife was about to smile through a public insult and remember it for the next 7 years. She could run a gala, a charity auction, a private museum dinner, a wedding for two families who hated each other, and a corporate celebration for a company whose executives had nothing in common except money and fear of irrelevance. She could raise a daughter, build a business, answer messages at midnight, select linen weights from memory, and convince caterers, florists, musicians, trustees, brides, and bored billionaires that they were all the most reasonable people in the world. She could do many things. Not answering Sloan Whitaker's text had apparently not been one of them. Her phone buzzed inside the slim pocket hidden along the seam of her dress. Margot did not check it immediately. That was the first rule with Sloan. Never look too quickly. She waited until Henry Vale, the board chair, crossed in front of her with a silver-haired donor and a laugh that sounded 90% funded. Then Margot lowered her champagne glass, turned slightly toward the wall, and slipped out her phone. "Sloan, are you pretending not to see this, or are you just enjoying making me wait?" Margot looked at the message for half a second longer than necessary. Then she typed back, "I'm working." The reply came almost instantly, "I like watching you work." Margot's mouth betrayed her. Barely. Not a smile exactly. A warning sign. She locked the phone and put it away. Sloan had always had a talent for arriving before she entered a room. A text. A call. A memory. A smell on someone else's coat that reminded Margot of expensive hotel soap and warm skin. A photograph from an event where Sloan appeared in the background, one shoulder bare, one eyebrow lifted, as if she had been born knowing cameras were optional but attention was not. Whatever existed between them had been going on for almost 3 years. Not continuously. That would have required structure, and Sloan treated structure like a charming rumor. But often enough that Margot knew the shape of it too well. Sloan appeared. Sloan wanted. Sloan made Margot feel like the only solid thing in a room full of smoke. Then Sloan drifted back into her own life, not cruelly, not carelessly exactly, but without ever building anything that could hold weight. No promises. No real plans. No "where is this going?" No "come with me next month." No toothbrush left behind. No holiday conversation. No shared calendar. Only nights that felt too alive to refuse and mornings that made Margot feel composed in the worst possible way. Margot understood it now. That was the irritating part. She was not 25. She was not confused. She was not being lied to. Sloan had never promised her a life. Sloan had only ever offered heat, and Margot, who had spent years being responsible, scheduled, sensible, and necessary, kept taking it. Because heat was not nothing. Because being wanted by Sloan Whitaker felt like being pulled out of a room where she had been polite for too long. Because Margot's body, inconveniently loyal to its own desires, did not care that her mind had started wanting more. "Margot." The voice came from her left. She turned, already smiling in the correct temperature. Adrien Cross stood beside the old marble fireplace, shaking rain from the edge of his coat. For 1 second, time folded strangely. Not painfully, just noticeably. Adrien, at 43, had become the kind of handsome that looked less accidental than it had in his 20s. Dark hair with a little silver at the temples. Good tuxedo. Calm expression. A man who had learned how to occupy important rooms without seeming hungry for them. "Adrien," Margot said. He leaned in and kissed her cheek lightly, a greeting so familiar and neutral that no one watching would be able to turn it into gossip unless they were truly desperate. "You look very much in charge," he said. "I am very much in charge." That explains the fear in the caterer's eyes. That's respect. Of course. Margot's smile warmed, because Adrien had earned that from her over the years. Not romantic warmth. Not even nostalgia, really. Just a long, practical tenderness built from shared history. They had been young together. Not high school sweethearts, not some grand tragic story, but young enough to mistake chemistry for direction and adult enough to deal with the consequences. Their daughter had arrived before either of them had learned how to build a life with someone else. Marriage had never made sense for them. Not because they hated each other. Not because anyone betrayed anyone. They simply had not been in love enough to pretend forever would be fair. So they had done something less dramatic and more useful. They had grown up. Separately mostly. But with care. Adrien had always shown up for their daughter. Tuition forms. Doctors. First apartment chaos. Emergency money when Margot's business was still a risk disguised as confidence. No grand speeches. No public performance. Just presence when it mattered. That counted. More than many love stories, Margot thought sometimes. "How is she?" Adrien asked. Margot knew immediately who he meant. "She's fine. Busy. She called yesterday to tell me she has no clean towels but somehow had time to go to a midnight film screening." Adrien smiled. "That sounds like college. That sounds like poor domestic planning. She gets that from me. She gets charm from you. Poor domestic planning is entirely her own achievement." Adrien laughed. It was easy. That was what people misunderstood about them. They were easy together because nothing was being asked anymore. Is she coming home for spring break? He asked. She says yes. Which means she'll arrive with 2 bags of laundry, and the emotional intensity of someone who has discovered group projects are a human rights issue. She'll want money. She'll want groceries and then money. I'll handle groceries. You always say that like you won't also give her money. I'm weak. You are. They stood there for a moment, watching the room, 2 people who had once made a daughter by accident, and then spent 2 decades trying not to make that anyone's wound. Adrien looked at the ballroom. You built this beautifully. Don't sound surprised. I'm not. I remember when you planned that fundraiser at 22 with no budget and a venue that smelled like damp carpet. It was not damp carpet. It was definitely damp carpet. It was character. It was mildew. Margot laughed, and for a second, she forgot to keep the sound small. Across the room, the doors opened. Margot felt it before she looked. Not danger. Not exactly. Recognition. Sloan Whitaker stepped in from the rain like she had been expected by the weather. She wore black tonight, but not a simple black. A sleek velvet suit with nothing obvious underneath except a narrow line of pale skin at the throat, her blonde hair tucked behind one ear, lips dark enough to look intentional and careless at the same time. She handed her coat to the attendant without taking her eyes off the room. Then off Margot. Then off Adrien. Margot thought. There it is. Sloan smiled. It was beautiful. It was also not friendly. Adrien followed Margot's gaze and saw her. Is that Sloan Whitaker? He asked. Yes. Should I be afraid? No. Sloan started toward them. Margot kept her expression level. Adrien, annoyingly observant after all these years, murmured, Should you? Margot gave him a look. Go donate something. I did donate something. Donate again. He smiled and took a step back just as Sloan arrived. Margot, Sloan said. Not hello. Not good evening. Just her name like she had been holding it in her mouth since the car. Sloan. Sloan looked at Adrien. The pause lasted 1 beat too long to be accidental, and 1 beat too short to be rude. Adrien cross, Margot said, because she was not going to be pulled into whatever game Sloan's eyes had started playing. Sloan Whitaker. Of course, Adrien said, extending a hand. Good to meet you. Sloan took it. Her smile was polished, now society ready. Anyone watching from 10 feet away would see a charming introduction. Margot, unfortunately, was standing close enough to see the possessive spark beneath it. Adrien, Sloan said. I've heard your name. Adrien's expression stayed pleasant. I hope not in connection with anything criminal. Not recently. He laughed. Margot did not. Sloan's gaze flicked toward her, satisfied. There was no reason for Sloan to be jealous of Adrien. None. He was not a rival. He was not an unfinished chapter. He was the father of Margot's daughter, and a man with whom Margot had built a functional peace years ago. Sloan knew that. Which made it worse. Sloan did not get jealous because she felt threatened by romantic possibility. She got jealous because some childish, glittering, inconvenient part of her did not like evidence that anyone had ever had access to Margot before her. Even access that had ended before Sloan had finished college. How do you two know each other? Sloan asked. Margot looked at her. Sloan's face was innocent. Entirely too innocent. Adrien answered before Margot had to. We share a daughter. Sloan's eyes sharpened. It was quick. Almost invisible. But Margot saw it. The tiny recalibration. The reminder that Adrien had not merely dated Margot. He had history that could not be erased by charm, wealth, or a better dress. Our daughter is in college now, Margot added, because she refused to let Sloan fill silence with imagination. Adrien came tonight for the foundation. Of course, Sloan said. How grown up. Adrien looked amused. We try. We do more than try, Margot said. He inclined his head. Fair. Sloan's fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne glass. Margot should not have enjoyed that. She did not enjoy it exactly. But there was something hot about Sloan's jealousy when it was not cruel. Something alive. something that made the air thinner. It was not healthy enough to build a life on, and Margot knew that perfectly well, but it made her skin wake up in the present tense. Sloan leaned slightly toward Margot. "Can I borrow you for a second?" she asked. Margot lifted one eyebrow. "I'm running an event." "I can see that." "Then you understand the answer." "No," Sloan said softly. "I understand that you want the answer to be no." Adrien cleared his throat, hiding a smile. Margot looked at him. "Don't," she warned. "I said nothing." "You thought loudly." "I have to make a call anyway." Adrien gave Sloan a polite nod, then turned back to Margot. "Tell her to text me if she needs anything before midterms." "I will." "And Margot?" "Yes." He glanced at the room. "It really is beautiful." This time, she let herself accept it. "Thank you." Adrien walked away. Sloan watched him go. Then she stepped into the space he had left. Not close enough to be improper. Close enough to make Margot aware of the exact distance between them. "So," Sloan said, "Adrien." Margot took a sip of champagne. "You sound like you just discovered ancient ruins." "In a way." "He is not ruins." "No. He looks very well preserved." Margot almost smiled despite herself. "Don't start." "I'm being generous." "You're being territorial." Sloane's gaze returned to her face. The playfulness did not disappear, but something more honest moved under it. Yes. There was the problem with Sloan. She could be impossible, and then she could be honest so quickly Margot lost the neat shape of her frustration. "You have no reason to be," Margot said. "I know." "Do you?" "Yes." "Then." Sloan looked at Margot's mouth. "Not long. Long enough. I don't like picturing anyone having a version of you I don't get." Margot's breath paused. A waiter passed behind them with a tray of champagne, and the room went on being elegant around them, entirely indifferent to the fact that Sloan Whitaker had just reached across years and found one of Margot's softer places without permission. Margot kept her voice even. "That's not how time works." "I know that too." "Very intellectual evening for you." Sloan smiled. "Don't be mean. It makes me want you." "Sloan." "What?" "I'm at a charity event." "I'm already behaving against my nature." Margot looked away because the smile was coming whether she allowed it or not. That was another problem. Sloan amused her. Not in the easy way Adrien did, with old familiarity and harmless timing. Sloan amused her like trouble leaning in the doorway, well-dressed and waiting to see if Margot had learned her lesson. She had not. Not entirely. "Nora is looking panicked," Margot said. "Nora always looks panicked near you. You have that effect on employees." "I have standards." "You have a worshipful little army. They are paid." "Not enough, I'm sure." Margot handed her champagne to a passing waiter. "Enjoy the gala." Sloane's fingers brushed the inside of Margot's wrist before she could step away. A brief touch. Low. Hidden. Familiar. Margot stopped. Sloan leaned in just enough for her voice to land close to Margot's ear. "Enjoy pretending you aren't watching me." Margot did not turn her head. But her skin answered. That was the irritating thing. Her skin had no dignity where Sloan was concerned. Sloan let go and drifted toward the bar, leaving Margot to stand there for 1 second too long with the ghost of fingers at her wrist and a professional emergency waiting 20 feet away. The next 40 minutes moved quickly. The first toast happened. The main donor was introduced. A minor seating issue was solved before it became visible. 2 board members who hated each other were separated by a charming retired judge with a passion for bird photography. The wine service stayed on time. The string trio shifted into something softer. Margot worked. Working steadied her. It always had. She did not feel empty inside her work. That was not her problem. She loved what she did. Loved the tension of it, the precision, the invisible architecture of a successful evening. She had not stumbled through life waiting for someone to rescue her from loneliness. She had raised a daughter, built a company, chosen clients carefully enough that her name now opened doors she used to enter through catering corridors. She had a good life. A full one. What she did not have was someone to come home to who felt like a decision, not an interruption. And lately, that absence had started making itself known in small ways. An extra coffee cup in a cafe window. A couple arguing softly over paint colors and somehow making it look intimate. Her daughter texting less because college was doing what it was supposed to do, pulling her forward. Margot was proud of that. She had wanted her daughter to have her own life. She just had not expected the silence afterward to sound quite so specific. Ms. Hill. Margot turned. The woman was tall, with dark auburn hair cut just past her collarbone and a winter white dress that looked simple only until one noticed how perfectly it fit. She held no champagne, no phone, no social armor. Just herself. She looked like someone who knew exactly what suited her and had stopped asking permission years ago. Yes, Margot said. The woman smiled. Not wide. Not practiced. Celeste Rowan. I think I'm supposed to thank you for making the Heritage House look like itself, only better. Margot paused. That was not the usual compliment. Most people praised flowers, lighting, food, the obvious things. You know the building? Margot asked. A little. I consulted on one of the side rooms 3 years ago. Not this ballroom, unfortunately. No one asked me before they committed crimes against the east ceiling. Margot looked toward the ceiling, then back at her. The east ceiling has been bothering me all night. Celeste's eyes lit with quiet satisfaction. Good. I was worried I was alone. You're not. That's comforting. It shouldn't be. It means we're both trapped with it. Celeste laughed softly. The sound did not try to draw anyone closer. It did anyway. Margot glanced at the program in her hand. Restoration. Architecture. Mostly historic restoration now. Small studio. Selective projects. Occasional arguments with people who think replacing original woodwork with something cleaner is a vision. Sounds like noble suffering. Expensive suffering, ideally. Margot smiled. There was something unusually pleasant about the way Celeste spoke. Dry but not sarcastic. Confident, but not performing for approval. She did not seem impressed by the room in the way most guests were, nor bored by it in the way some wealthier guests pretended to be. She was simply present. Looking, noticing, enjoying what deserved to be enjoyed and judging what deserved judgment. That, Margot could respect. Are you here with the Preservation Council? Margot asked. As a guest. A few of my clients are involved, and someone thought I should step away from floor plans long enough to wear real shoes. Margot glanced down. The shoes were very real. Black, elegant, with a heel low enough to suggest a woman who liked beauty but intended to survive the evening. A practical choice, Margot said. I've reached the age where I refuse to limp for someone else's idea of glamour. Margot looked at her again. 46 or 47, perhaps. Not trying to look younger. Not asking the room to validate her. There was a satisfaction in that. A magnetism that had nothing to do with chasing attention. Smart, Margot said. I try. Do you succeed? Often enough to remain interesting. That made Margot smile before she could manage it. Celeste noticed, but she did not pounce on the reaction. She let it be. Margot appreciated that more than she expected. Are you enjoying the evening? Margot asked. I am. You sound surprised. I usually dislike galas. That is devastating feedback delivered to the organizer. I said usually. Very generous. I mean it, Celeste said. Most events like this try too hard to impress people who arrive determined to be impressed. This feels. She looked around thoughtful. Less anxious. Margot's attention sharpened. Less anxious. That was exactly what she had been trying to create. Not luxury. Not spectacle. Not another room full of money showing itself its reflection. Ease. Controlled ease, but ease nonetheless. That may be the most specific compliment I've received tonight, Margot said. Good. You like being specific? I like being accurate. That should have felt arrogant. It did not. Maybe because Celeste's confidence did not lean forward demanding applause. It stood calmly on its own ground. Before Margot could answer, Nora appeared beside her again. Sorry, Nora said, not sorry at all. The auctioneer wants to know if we're holding the private dinner lot until after the second speech or moving it earlier. Earlier, Margot said. The room is warm now. If we wait, they'll lose interest. Nora nodded, then glanced at Celeste with quick curiosity. Margot ignored it. Also, Nora said, Henry wants you near the podium in 5. Of course he does. Should I tell him you're unavailable? No. Tell him I'm omnipresent. Nora grinned. Already implied. She left. Celeste watched the exchange with clear amusement. You enjoy this, she said. Margot looked back at her. Work? The orchestration. I do. Good. Why good? Because people are much more attractive when they're not pretending to hate what they're good at. Margot felt that land in a place she had not offered. She looked at Celeste more carefully. Celeste took a sip of wine, perfectly untroubled by the fact that she had said something far too direct for a first conversation at a gala. You say things like that often? Margot asked. Only when I mean them. That doesn't make it less dangerous. No, Celeste said. But it saves time. A small silence opened between them. Not awkward. Not empty. Just a pause with shape. Margot became aware of Sloan across the room before she saw her. When she glanced over, Sloan was standing near the bar, listening to a man in a navy tuxedo while looking directly at Margot. At Margot and Celeste. The expression on Sloan's face was pleasant. Too pleasant. Margot turned back to Celeste. I have to rescue a podium, she said. Celeste followed her gaze briefly, saw Sloan, then returned to Margot without asking the question. That alone was refreshing. Then rescue it, Celeste said. I'll be here, silently judging the ceiling. Margot smiled. The east ceiling? Among other things. Margot walked away with the strangest sensation of having left a conversation unfinished in a way that did not irritate her. It interested her. The speech went well. Henry did not wander off script more than twice. The crowd laughed where they were supposed to. The private dinner lot sold higher than expected. Margot watched the room respond, adjust, warm, loosen. She made small corrections as needed. A nod to Nora. A message to the kitchen. A hand on Henry's sleeve before he accidentally promised something the board had not approved. Everything worked. And through it all, Sloan's attention followed her. Not constantly. Sloan was too socially skilled for that. She laughed with people. Let donors charm themselves in her direction. Accepted another glass of champagne. Tilted her head at exactly the right angle when older men explained things she already knew. But every few minutes, Margot felt the pull again. Look at me. Margot did not. Mostly. At 9:30, she slipped into the side corridor near the balcony doors to answer a call from the florist about the morning pickup. She kept her voice low, professional, efficient. Yes, tomorrow before 10. No. The arrangements in the gallery are being donated. The ballroom pieces come back with you. Make sure the orchids are separated before transport. She ended the call and turned. Sloan was leaning against the wall 5 feet away. Margot did not startle. She refused to give her the satisfaction. Do you haunt all historical properties? Margot asked. Or only the ones with open bars? Sloan smiled. Only the ones with you in them. That line has probably worked for you. Don't sound so disappointed. It can still work. Margot should have walked past her. Instead, she stood there in the dim corridor while the gala moved beyond the wall, muffled and glowing. Sloan's velvet jacket caught the low light along one shoulder. She had set down her champagne somewhere. Her hands were empty now, which was not better. You were flirting, Sloan said. Margot exhaled once. With whom? Sloan's eyes narrowed. Don't. I'm genuinely curious. You've been jealous of Adrien, and Adrien is the father of my adult daughter. Now you're jealous of architectural criticism. So you noticed I was jealous. Everyone within 10 feet noticed you were jealous. No, they didn't. No, they didn't, Margot admitted. But I did. Sloan stepped closer. The corridor was narrow enough that Margot could feel the shift immediately. Good, Sloan said. Margot's pulse answered before she did. Sloan, I like when you notice. I have a job to do. You always say that. Because I often have a job to do. And yet somehow, Sloan said, coming closer still, you keep ending up alone with me. Margot backed half a step without thinking. Her shoulders met the wall. Sloan saw it. Of course she saw it. Her expression changed, just enough. The teasing softened into something more focused, more dangerous. She did not touch Margot. Not yet. She only stood close enough that Margot felt the warmth of her body and the faint scent of rain in her hair. This was the part Margot hated. Not because it was unpleasant. Because it was not. Because the desire came so quickly, it felt almost undignified. One moment she was composed, practical, thinking about orchid transport and auction timing. The next, Sloan was close and Margot's body remembered everything with brutal efficiency. Sloan's gaze lowered to Margot's mouth. You didn't answer me last night, she said. I was tired. Were you? Yes. Too tired to answer? Margot swallowed. Yes. Sloan lifted one hand and touched the wall beside Margot's shoulder. Still not touching her. Worse somehow. You could have said that. I just did. I mean last night. I didn't owe you an answer last night. Sloan's face shifted. Not anger. Something closer to discomfort. Because she knew Margot was right. Because knowing did not make her want less. No, Sloan said quietly. You didn't. That was another reason Margot stayed too often. Sloan did not lie when cornered. She might evade, tease, disappear, return, refuse labels, refuse plans, refuse the slow, ordinary work of building something. But when truth stood in front of her, she usually recognized it. Then she found a way not to change. Her fingers drifted from the wall to Margot's shoulder. Light. Questioning. Margot could have moved. She did not. Sloan's thumb brushed the edge of Margot's gown where the fabric met bare skin near her collarbone. Heat moved through Margot in a clean, terrible line. Sloan saw the breath she tried to hide. Her voice lowered. There you are. Margot closed her eyes for 1 second. A mistake. Sloan stepped closer into that second. Not trapping her. Margot would have stopped it if she felt trapped. But entering the space Margot had failed to defend. Her lips brushed Margot's cheek. Barely. A social kiss turned private by location and intent. Margot's hand came up to Sloan's wrist. To push her away, she told herself. Maybe. Sloan's mouth moved closer to her ear. I don't like seeing you with people who think they know you, she whispered. Margot's fingers tightened. Adrien does know me. Sloan went still. Margot opened her eyes. The look on Sloan's face was quick, bright, and hot. Jealousy, yes. But not ugly. Not cruel. It moved through her like a spark catching dry paper. Don't say that, Sloan said. Margot's voice softened despite herself. It's true. I don't care. You do care. Yes, Sloan said. That's the problem. For a moment, the corridor held both of them in a silence that felt too alive. Sloan's hand moved from Margot's shoulder to her waist. Margot's breath changed. Sloan did not miss it. She leaned in slowly this time, giving Margot every chance to stop her. Margot told herself to do exactly that. She had an event. Staff nearby. Guests beyond the wall. A career built on never being careless in public. Sloan's mouth touched hers. Not fully. A brush. A test. Margot should have turned away. Instead, she answered just enough to make Sloan inhale sharply. That sound did something reckless to the room. Sloan kissed her again. Deeper now but still controlled, one hand at Margot's waist, the other slipping to the side of her neck. Margot's grip on Sloan's wrist became something else. Not refusal. Not permission exactly. Something in between, full of old habit and immediate want. The kiss lasted only a few seconds. That was all it could last. But it was enough to make Margot feel the full force of the history between them. Hotel rooms, late-night drives, champagne abandoned on kitchen counters, Sloan laughing against her throat, Margot promising herself she would not do this again, and then doing it again because Sloan knew how to make wanting feel like a form of being alive. Margot broke the kiss. Not dramatically. With effort. Sloane's forehead hovered near hers. Their breath mixed in the narrow space. "Come home with me after," Sloan said. Margot closed her eyes. There it was. Not dinner next week. Not stay tomorrow. Not let's talk. Come home with me after. Heat without architecture. Fire without shelter. "Sloan," Margot said. "I know. You don't. I know what you're going to say. Then why ask?" Sloan pulled back enough to look at her. The jealousy had softened now, but the want had not. "Because sometimes you say yes." Margot felt that more than she wanted to. The music from the ballroom swelled faintly through the wall. Someone laughed nearby. Reality returned by degrees. Margot stepped out from between Sloan and the wall. "No promises," she said. Sloan smiled, but there was something restless under it. "You always say that." "So do you." That landed. Margot saw it. Sloan looked away first. Good, Margot thought. Then hated herself a little for needing the small victory. She smoothed her gown, checked her lipstick in the reflection of a framed photograph on the wall, and turned back toward the ballroom. Behind her, Sloan said, "Margot." She stopped. "You look beautiful tonight." The words were simple. No tease. No hook. No strategy. Margot turned her head. Sloan was still leaning against the wall, all black velvet and restless light, looking at her as if Margot were something she wanted with a force she did not know how to make useful. "Thank you," Margot said. Then she went back to work. For another hour, the gala continued in perfect rhythm, and Margot continued pretending the kiss in the corridor had not loosened something at the base of her spine. It was not difficult to pretend. Pretending was part of the work. Smile here. Nod there. Soften a donor. Redirect a conversation. Make sure the people with money never had to see the machinery that made them comfortable. But she could feel Sloan in the room like weather. And, unexpectedly, she kept noticing Celeste Rowan. Not constantly. Not with the same physical pull. Celeste was not trying to interrupt her concentration. That, perhaps, was why Margot kept catching glimpses of her. Celeste speaking with two younger architects near the side gallery, one hand resting in the pocket of her coat. Celeste laughing at something a curator said, head tilted slightly back. Celeste standing alone for a moment by the windows, not checking her phone, not scanning for someone more useful to talk to, simply looking out at the rain as if she had chosen that pause on purpose. Margot found that unusual. Most people in rooms like this feared being seen alone. Celeste did not look alone. She looked occupied by her own life. At 10:45, Margot finally let herself step out onto the balcony. Not the large one facing the street. That would be too cold, too visible, too dramatic. This was a smaller side balcony tucked behind heavy glass doors at the end of the south corridor, half covered by old stonework and sheltered from most of the rain. It overlooked a narrow courtyard where bare branches shivered under the streetlights. Margot went there because she needed 90 seconds without anyone asking her where something was. The air was cold enough to clear her head. She folded her arms loosely and looked down at the courtyard. Behind her, the gala became muffled again. Bass notes from the music. Voices through glass. The occasional burst of laughter. Her phone buzzed. Sloan. Don't disappear too long. Margot stared at it. Then another message appeared. Sloan or due. I like finding you. Margot locked the phone and slipped it away. She should have gone back inside. Instead, she stayed. The rain had softened to mist. Tiny drops gathered along the stone railing. The city smelled like wet brick and expensive wool. Somewhere below, a car passed slowly through the narrow street. Am I interrupting? Margot turned. Celeste stood just inside the balcony doors, one hand on the frame, her charcoal coat now over her shoulders. No, Margot said. I'm hiding. Celeste stepped out and closed the door behind her. Then I apologize for finding you. You don't sound sorry. I'm not especially. Margot smiled. Celeste came to stand a few feet away, not too close. The balcony was narrow, but she still managed to give Margot space. That, Margot noticed, was becoming a pattern. Celeste entered without taking over. For a moment, they stood side by side, looking down at the courtyard. The room is getting louder, Celeste said. It always does after the auction. People celebrating generosity? People celebrating being seen being generous. Celeste glanced at her. Margot looked ahead, surprised by her own candor. Then Celeste smiled. There's the honest version. Margot gave her a sideways look. You've met me for 6 minutes. More like 12. That's a dangerous amount of confidence for 12 minutes. I work with old buildings. I make quick judgments and then spend months proving myself right. Margot laughed. Softly this time. Not because she was performing ease. Because she felt it. Celeste leaned her forearms lightly on the stone railing. You're good at this, she said. At hiding on balconies? At making everyone else feel like the night is effortless, even when I'm sure it isn't. Margot looked at her profile. In the dim balcony light, Celeste looked unlike the women who usually orbited these events. Not because she was trying to stand apart. Because she already did. She had the quiet confidence of someone who had built a life she actually liked. That's the job, Margot said. No, Celeste said. The job is logistics. This is something else. Margot was quiet. Compliments usually passed through her easily. She knew how to receive them, redirect them, make them useful. But Celeste's compliments seemed to arrive stripped of social padding. No performance. No implied debt. That made them harder to handle. Celeste looked at her. Did I overstep? No. Good. You asked that after the fact? I prefer efficient apologies. Margot smiled again. This was not flirtation in the way she was used to, though it was not innocent either. There was a charge under the conversation, but it moved differently. Less like being chased. More like being invited to stop running and see what happened. Margot did not know whether she liked that. She knew she noticed it. Inside, applause rose and then faded. Celeste looked toward the doors. You'll have to go back soon. Yes. But not yet. Margot's pulse changed. Not dramatically. Enough. Not yet, she said. Celeste turned slightly, giving Margot more of her attention. I enjoyed meeting you tonight, she said. Margot laughed under her breath. That sounds like something written on a thank you note. It does, doesn't it? A little. Celeste nodded. Then let me try again. She stepped closer. Only one step. The air between them warmed despite the cold. I liked watching you tonight, Celeste said. Not in the way everyone watches the person in charge because they need something. I liked the way you moved through that room like you knew exactly where the pressure points were. I liked that you noticed the ceiling. I liked that you laughed when you forgot to manage it. Margot's throat went dry. Celeste's voice remained calm, but there was nothing casual in it now. And I liked that when you looked at me, Celeste continued, you did not seem bored. Margot should have had a reply. A good one. A polished one. Instead, she said, I wasn't. Celeste's gaze held hers. The courtyard below went quiet. The rain misted along the stone edge of the balcony. Margot became aware of how close they were now. Not touching. Not nearly. But close enough that the conversation had turned private in a way that had nothing to do with volume. Celeste looked at her mouth. Just once. Then back at her eyes. Margot felt the look in her stomach. I'm going to say something direct, Celeste said. Margot's breath caught, and she disguised it by lifting one eyebrow. That seems to be a habit. Only when useful. And this is useful? I think so. Celeste turned fully toward her. Not rushing. Not hesitating. Just choosing. I'm too old to spend an evening wondering whether I imagine something, she said. And too old to pretend I don't want to find out. Margot's pulse was clear now. Slow, but strong. Find out what? Celeste's expression softened with a hint of amusement. That, she said, was not your strongest question. Margot almost laughed. Almost. But Celeste was closer now, and the laugh did not quite make it out. "I may kiss you," Celeste said. "If you want me to." The sentence landed between them, clean and warm and startlingly adult. No trap. No performance. No push. A door opened. Margot looked at her. There were many reasons to say no. Sloan was inside. Margot was working. They had just met. The balcony was cold. The gala was not over. And yet, none of those reasons rose to her mouth. Celeste waited. That might have been the thing that undid her. She did not lean in and make Margot stop her. Did not assume attraction gave her permission. Did not turn the silence into pressure. She waited as if Margot's answer mattered more than the kiss. Margot's voice came out quiet. "Yes." Celeste moved then. Slowly, but without doubt. She stepped close enough that the edge of her coat brushed Margot's bare arm. One hand lifted, pausing near Margot's waist before settling there lightly, as if even now she was listening for refusal. Margot did not refuse. Her own hand came to rest against Celeste's sleeve, fingers curling into the soft wool without planning to. Celeste leaned in. The first touch of her mouth was gentle. Not timid. Gentle. That distinction moved through Margot before thought did. Celeste kissed her as if she had time, as if she did not need to prove anything in the first 3 seconds. Her mouth was warm against the cold air, her hand steady at Margot's waist, her body close enough to be felt but not used as a claim. Margot's eyes closed. The city disappeared first. Then the gala. Then the part of her mind still counting candles and coats and auction totals. For once, no one was asking anything of her. No one needed the next solution. No one was pulling her into heat and leaving her to cool alone. Celeste kissed her once, then paused just enough for Margot to choose again. Margot chose. Her fingers tightened around Celeste's sleeve, and she leaned in, deepening the kiss herself. Celeste made a soft sound, barely there, but Margot felt it against her mouth. The kiss warmed quickly then, not wild, not careless, but undeniably alive. Celeste's hand slid more securely to Margot's waist. Margot's other hand rose to the lapel of Celeste's coat, holding her closer as the cold balcony air moved around them. The railing pressed behind Margot. Celeste did not crowd her. Still, Margot felt surrounded. Not trapped. Held in the shape of a moment that had become real before she could organize it. Celeste's mouth moved slowly over hers, patient and searching, and Margot answered in small ways she could not hide. A breath. A turn of her head. The tightening of her fingers. The quiet sound she caught too late. Celeste heard it. Margot knew because the kiss changed. It deepened, just enough to make warmth rush under Margot's skin. Celeste's thumb moved once at her waist through the silk of her gown, not possessive, not hesitant, but sure. Margot leaned into the touch before she could decide whether that was wise. A laugh sounded inside near the balcony doors. Reality brushed the edge of the moment. Celeste slowed the kiss instead of breaking it sharply. That nearly ruined Margot more than the kiss itself. One soft press, then another. Then she drew back only far enough to let them breathe. Margot opened her eyes. Celeste was close, her face calm but not unaffected. Her mouth had softened. Her breathing had changed. There was satisfaction in her expression, yes, but not conquest. More like confirmation. Margot's hand was still gripping her coat. She released it slowly. Celeste noticed. Of course she did. A small smile touched her mouth. "Well," Celeste said quietly. Margot exhaled, almost laughing. "That is not a very architectural response." "No. But it's accurate." Margot looked down for half a second, then back up. The kiss was still moving through her. Not like Sloan's kiss in the corridor. She refused to compare them directly, even in her own mind. That felt too neat. Too cheap. This was simply itself. Unexpected. Measured. Far less safe than it looked. Celeste touched the side of Margot's hand once, then let go. "I should let you return to your gala," she said. "You kiss someone on a balcony and then become considerate?" I was considerate before. The kiss was just evidence that I'm not dead. Margot laughed. This time, she did not try to control it. Celeste looked pleased. The balcony door opened behind them. Nora stepped halfway out, saw them standing close, and stopped so abruptly she nearly hit the door frame. "Oh," Nora said. Margot closed her eyes for 1 second. Celeste turned her face toward the courtyard, clearly suppressing a smile. Nora's gaze darted between them with the speed of someone acquiring information she fully intended to respect and privately treasure. "Sorry," Nora said. Actually, no, I don't. I need nothing." "Nora," Margot said. Nora straightened. "Henry is looking for you. But not urgently. Emotionally urgently, yes. Operationally, no." Margot gave her a look. "I'll tell him you're saving the West Wing," Nora said, then vanished back inside. The door closed. For one beat, neither woman moved. Then Celeste left. Margot stared at the door. "I'm going to have to give her a raise." "Because she saw us?" "Because she improvised a lie under pressure. Valuable skill." "Extremely." Celeste's smile lingered. Margot looked at her, and something in the air shifted again. The humor did not erase the kiss. It wrapped around it, made it feel less like a dramatic accident and more like something that had happened in a real life where assistants interrupted and board chairs panicked and women still wanted things after 40. Celeste reached into her coat pocket and took out a card. Not a business card from a glossy networking stack. A simple cream card with her name, studio, number, and email printed in dark gray. She handed it to Margot. "No pressure," Celeste said. "No guessing game either." Margot looked at the card, then at her. "You're very calm for someone who just kissed a woman she met tonight." "I'm not calm," Celeste said. Margot's pulse touched the sentence. Celeste smiled slightly. "I'm just not confused." Then she stepped back. "Good night, Margot." Margot did not stop her. She watched Celeste open the balcony door and return inside, moving with that same unhurried certainty, as if nothing about the evening required her to chase an outcome. Margot stood alone in the misting rain for several seconds. The card rested against her palm. Inside, the gala glowed behind glass. Somewhere in the building, Sloan was probably waiting, restless and beautiful and entirely capable of making Margot forget her best intentions for one more night. Margot slipped Celeste's card into the hidden pocket of her gown. Then she went back inside. The room was still hers. The lights, the music, the guests, the timing, the small collapses and recoveries. Margot stepped into the warm sound of it and became, again, the woman everyone trusted to hold the evening together. But something had shifted. Not enough for anyone else to see. Enough for her to feel. Across the ballroom, Sloan turned her head the moment Margot entered. Her gaze moved over Margot's face. Then to the balcony doors behind her. Then back. Sloan's smile appeared slowly. Not soft. Not pleased. Interested. Margot held her gaze. For once, she did not look away first. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. And if you'd like to support my one-person channel, you can do that through the link below.